Hi, thanks a lot for coming to watch another video. My name is Dan, and today I am drawing a bear skull. Or it would be more accurate to say I have drawn a bear skull, and now I am shading it. To get things out of the way at the very beginning here, this particular bear skull is one that I drew a while back from reference, just some photo I found on the internet, and I'll put it up in the video if I recall, but I drew it and then I markered it in to kind of play around with alcohol-based markers, and I drew some flowers around it. I think I put the video of that on the channel here, so that'll be one of my earlier videos. But when I drew that, I had the idea to trace it and have a couple copies standing by, so to speak. So I drew out the skull in pencil, put some pen over it, got out a light box, and just traced that pen over. So this one is a tracing of the original one. My plan originally was to do a triptych of sorts, and I drew one green with flowers, and then I was thinking of doing one red or purple or blue. Like I have alcohol-based markers in green, purple, and blue. So I was thinking, hey, I could just trace this 3 times, have different flowers around them, and I might still do that. I might pursue that with something in the future, but this time I never got around to it. I just didn't feel like it, and this guy was sitting up on my desk for months, and now I just decided to practice some shading on him. So, in the spirit of explaining what I'm trying to do with the shading here, I am focusing on using line length, line spacing, and cross-hatching to try and convey both value or shading. I might be using that word wrong, value, but basically lightness versus darkness. And I'm also trying to convey direction and texture. So as I'm drawing here, I'm trying to use longer unbroken lines in lighter spots, and then more broken up lines in darker spots. So I'll put the lines closer together to show a darker area, and I'll also have the line broken up by dots and little white gaps. It might seem counterintuitive, but based on the drawing and based on how it came out, I think it worked out to show, I don't know, more texture or something. I like how it looks, and I think that you can see what I mean by this more broken up line work. Cross-hatching is probably something very many folks are familiar with that might be listening, but putting lines in a perpendicular direction to the initial lines to create a darker value. I tried to stick with a value scale, which is something that I do still need to work on. But basically a value scale is you draw a rectangle and break it up into 6 parts. The darkest part will be on the far left, and that's value 6. Your lightest part will be on the far right. That's value 0 or 1, or however it works out. But the idea is that the lightest value will just be white. That's where light is hitting directly, and the darkest value is going to be the either just straight up black, or if you're using cross-hatching and line weight, it'll be a very dark value with very little light poking through. So on this particular drawing at this point, a value 6 will be the very inside of the jawbone right beneath its teeth, or on the back side of the upper jaw where it's just the darkest in the drawing. Also here on the little divot or scoop of the jaw. I'm not sure the anatomical term, but the point where it loops around to come back up the other side of the jaw. Those are all very dark. And then the top left of the skull, where I envision the light source coming from, kind of hitting top left and going down, would be the lightest. I think it is pretty successful. I do like how it looks. I'm very pleased with the outcome, but obviously the idea of keeping the light values of an imaginary object in your mind as you draw is very difficult. It's something that I need to practice continuously on. I definitely learned a lot from this particular process, but I have a lot to keep in mind for the next one. I think, rather than doing imaginary conjecture of what the light might look like. Because again, I had this from reference. I was looking at a photo of a bear skull, but I did not have the photo in front of me, so I was just envisioning like, well, if there's divots and bends in the skull here or there, then the light might look like this or that, and I went from there. I do have a fake human skull that I think will be really good practice for this, so you'll probably see some videos like that in the future. Human skull practicing shading, except I'll actually include the drawing portion next time. And apart from that, just consistency is going to be an unending battle. I am very happy with how it came out, but there are points where I gave up the value scale and I just kind of put down lines where I felt it was right. I think it largely worked out. It's got this weird texture to it, but there's a lot to improve on. That inside of the skull there, where I was just kind of scribbling at, I really have no idea how the contours on the underside of a bear skull work. So that was just kind of guessing. If I make it, varied enough and hashed enough, it would look neat. And I think it does, but it's by no means accurate to what the lighting would look like there. I finished up with the shading and I wanted to put a little box around it. So that's what I'm doing here. Busting out the ruler to make sure I get them nice and sharp corner-wise. This is the value scale I was referring to, so I kind of gave up on it and just got into the drawing, but you can see what I mean. Far left being the darkest, far right being the lightest. I'm just trying to pick what I think would look nice for a solid black, because this little rectangle box I made, I want to fill in black, but I've had issues in the past with a flat black value that it has streaks or it's uneven, and so I was just testing out some markers there, pens that I had, to see what would be doable and not take forever. Because if I used a Micron pen, it'd probably be pretty streak-free, but it would take ages. So I'm using the good old Sharpie here. The drawback is that it's not the most precise tool ever. I do have a fine point Sharpie, which I bust out at the end, but that also tends to bleed through a bit. So I am pretty happy. And you will see on the final scan in the video that there is some streaking and some white spots, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Looking at it with the human eye, I think it looks really nice, and I'm pretty pleased with it. So, yeah, just finishing up here. Interruption from my cat as always. He's very affectionate and needy. Rounding off here just in the wider shot and zooming in way close for those little details. So this is that fine tip Sharpie I was talking about, and I thought I got it all, but maybe the lighting was too harsh. I can see it in the video, some spaces that I missed. But yeah, that's that. Thanks for watching. It was super fun to draw, and feel free to comment or like or subscribe or give me some critique. I'd love to hear it. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.